Everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do an in-depth sniff and comparison review of the Bath & Body Works White Barn Candle Company Pink Lavender and Espresso candle, part of their January 2023 Neutrals collection. But first, if you're new to Touch the Fire Twice, welcome. My mission here is to share my love and passion for fine home fragrance as an enthusiast, an educator, a reviewer, to inspire you to increase your own fragrance knowledge and understanding, ultimately enhancing the scent memories that you create. If you want to learn more about what I do, why I do it, how I do it, you can check out my website at TouchTheFireTwice.com. But for now, let's dig into Pink Lavender and Espresso. So start off by saying this is one of my traditional in-depth sniff comparison reviews, which means we'll go in-depth on this candle, both from the fragrance, the blend, what it's supposed to be, my assessment of it, what I get out of it, digging into the notes, learning about notes if there's anything in there that is new to us. And because this is a post-burn review, we will talk about the candle's performance, the strength, the throw, the projection, the wick, and the wax. And we will also take that a step further and do not just the in-depth sniff, but the in-depth sniff and comparison review, which means I will be doing a side-by-side comparison with two other, one maybe obvious and one perhaps surprise, candle from Bath & Body Works White Barn Candle Company from over the years, to compare and contrast. This is not a direct repackage, I don't believe, of either of these scents, but it really is a sister scent to both of these, and in some ways, at least with one of them, in some surprising ways. So first, let's dig into Pink Lavender and Espresso. So this is part of the Neutrals collection. This is now sort of the 1 year anniversary of when it first launched in the, let's say, late winter, early spring of 2022. And they continue to release them throughout the year and now into 2023. The more they're doing it, the more I generally am a fan of this Neutrals collection. I think the aesthetic is very simple. It's this matte, sort of chalky jar. You're usually going to get a white wax, which sometimes has a better chance of performing well compared to a deeply pigmented wax. Sometimes is a bit riskier, in my opinion, as far as potentially not having the ideal burn performance. And really, the fragrances that they throw in here are transparently not cohesive, don't always make sense. Sometimes they bring in their tried and true scents that should really just live in the White Barn Core collection, the year-round, always available candles. But sometimes they bring in new blends like this, or they bring in some returning classics, some old favorites. It really is a true, seemingly random mixed bag, but there's been some good scents, some really great new scents, some returning favorites, and some just, take it or leave it for me. But Pink Lavender and Espresso is essentially a new scent, though clearly based on a past winner. Now, when it comes to the fragrance notes, they list the same ones on the front here as on the bottom, and they give us rich pink lavender, caramel espresso beans, and smooth vanilla. Now, a lot of times with adjectives, rich lavender or smooth vanilla, that's not going to really differentiate the type of lavender or type of vanilla that it is, but it still can give you a sense of what you may expect from this, though sometimes it's more clearly, if it's an orange blossom or orange zest, you're going to get a truly different fragrance. If you're talking a smooth vanilla or a whipped vanilla, not really an official differentiator, but it still evokes that feeling of what you're going to get from this, potentially to give you a little bit more of a sense, but it's really just an adjective to add on to the actual note itself. That said, rich pink lavender. Okay, the rich, I would ignore the rich, potentially. But pink lavender, there are something like 450 varieties of lavender, many of which have the traditional, what you know as the lavender fragrance. Some are more strong than others. Some look a bit different. There can be, white, pink, blue, purplish varieties with varying intensities of fragrances. But pink lavender, at least from my research, seems to be fairly common like your English lavenders. Now, there are two lavenders that are used primarily in fragrance that do have key differences, and that is your English lavender versus your French lavender. And English lavender is going to be much lighter and sweeter than a French lavender because it has less camphor than the French lavender, which of course brings you that sort of herbaceous, piney, woody scent, sometimes almost borderline on medicinal or certainly astringent. When it comes to the fragrance itself and not some of the other, more medicinal or therapeutic properties, the English lavender is often preferred because it is very appealing, and sometimes they say it is similar to like almost a rosemary scent, whereas that French lavender with the camphor, much stronger, has more of those pine-like notes, deeper, heavier, more resinous almost really, and that's often used more for cleaning products and home products versus a candle, though if you're getting, an aromatherapeutic, air cleansing, odor eliminating type fragrance or something very, very strong and spring-like, maybe you will have that French lavender. This doesn't say which it is. I'm going to go and assume that by rich pink lavender, The idea of pink is usually lighter and brighter, so I'm thinking this is probably more like your lighter, sweeter, softer, more floral lavender than the camphorous, astringent, herbaceous lavender. And then of course, caramel espresso beans. Well, a couple of things I'll say about this before I get my nose on it. Caramel espresso beans. Well, two things. One, I believe they mean caramel, burnt sugar, Caramel. They spell it here caramel. What I find a little funny about that, I actually grew up in Western Pennsylvania, where with the standard dialect, most folks are going to say caramel, like caramel sauce or caramel brulee, whatever it might be. They drop that A, it's not caramel or caramel, it's usually caramel, 2 syllables. And so knowing that Bath & Body Works is headquartered in Ohio, I imagine, the dialects are very different and vernacular is very different, but there's some stuff that, one state over probably sticks. And I would imagine the pronunciation of caramel versus caramel to be potentially there. I almost just wonder if this is a copy error where spell check and or the copy editing team just didn't catch that someone put in caramel instead of caramel. That's number one. Number two, unless there's not a true natural espresso bean that is called, a capital C caramel espresso bean, certainly you can have added natural flavoring to espresso beans to make a caramel flavored coffee, or you can have espresso beans of different origins that are more cereal and nutty, or more fruity and winey, or more dark and chocolatey, or more light, based on the roasts, based on the processing, based on the actual bean itself. You can certainly have espresso beans that have a roasted sugar caramel-like flavor. Very unclear what they mean by that. It really should be like its own note, or rich pink lavender, espresso beans, and caramel vanilla, something like that. I think all that really does is confuse people. Caramel espresso beans. What does that really mean? Okay. And then finally, smooth vanilla. Very little, but that's fine. Let's get my nose on it. It's very pretty. If it was the first time I smelled this scent, which it is, but it's really close. It's, as it was once called in the olden days of the candle community, a repackage with a twist is really what this is, in my opinion. It's a beautiful fragrance. It is truly a gourmand lavender, which I love. I do love lavender. Over the years, I've gotten a little burnt out on it just because every candle company, every home fragrance company has lavender this, lavender that, and it's kind of like the entryway into sort of an herbaceous floral home fragrance, or certainly aromatherapy. Like, let's get a little bit weird, a little bit deeper into the deep cuts is really where I'm kind of living now, though I never would turn down a nice lavender. And this is a very nice lavender in the sense that it is obviously lavender. You pick that out, nearly anyone can pick that out without seeing the name or the notes. It's a bit of the softer floral. It is not that herbaceous. It is not piney. It is not woody. It is not camphorous. It is not astringent or medicinal. It's not overly powdery flower either. It is a light, sweet lavender mixed with mostly this smooth, call it vanilla, call it some gourmand notes, maybe even something like a heliotrope flower or something in there, which gives that fluffy, warm, almost marzipan kind of caramely, vanilla-like sweetness, though it is a floral. But smooth vanilla, okay. It's not quite like a, baked item like a cupcake or a scone or a biscotti or a croissant. It's not something super obvious. Borders on sort of a marshmallow though, without being super, super sweet. More so in the fluffy feeling of it, not the sweetness intensity of it. And so that's there. When it comes to caramel or espresso, I do get in the background some caramel, which will make sense when I get deeper into this comparison part of this review. The espresso is there. I wish it were stronger because it's not strong enough to be in the name as primary note. Certainly fine in the notes, that makes sense. But this is not an equal lavender and espresso, or even like a 60-40 or even a 70-30. It's like espresso is in there as much as the caramel, which is maybe 10% of this candle. It's not obvious, and I would bet if you do a blind sniff for folks, very few people will pick out espresso or coffee. It's more like a roasted, nutty depth. Not smoky, but roasted, nutty richness. That is a mixture of the caramel, like the burnt sugar, almost like your burnt vanilla, with your espresso, the coffee beans. So they are there. I wouldn't mind them being stronger. Think of, the Paris Cafe candle, which for me is too burnt brioche, burnt sugar, and intense, and therefore for me takes it a bit artificial. Though of course, these are primarily synthetic scents, which is not beside the point, but more so like that Paris Cafe cinnamon sugar vanilla blend. That's a softer version of the Paris Cafe coffee, but it's even weaker in this than in there. Like it's even less obvious in here. So to have espresso in the name doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but I do like it. It burns really well, strength throw performance. This pulled out to a healthy pull within 30, 40 minutes. For a soft vanilla lavender, it's pretty strong. It has a good balance of that strength of that, as well as the depth of the sort of burnt sugar, caramel, and your roasted espresso. Though again, that depth is there, but at like a 10% of the blend. Now doing the in-depth sniff comparison review, there's one very, very obvious scent that this smells probably 80 to 85% as a repackage. That's why it's repackaged with a twist. And that, of course, is your Lavender Marshmallow, originally as Lavender Marshmallow, then is Paris Lavender Macaron, then back again to Lavender Marshmallow. I do have the old ones in my, candle vault, but I pulled out the newest one from 2022 because that has sort of, it's easiest to get the freshest, this unburned, the freshest sniff because these oils are still essentially fresh. The notes, of course, on Lavender Marshmallow, fluffy marshmallow, touch of lavender, fresh vanilla bean. Now we know with Bath & Body Works, you can very easily go and change fresh vanilla bean to smooth vanilla, rich pink lavender to touch of lavender. It's all, Mad Libs. Put in which marketing is gonna match the collection, the label, and you're gonna have that within, the same fragrance. However, this is stronger, actually, on the lavender. The vanilla is, I'd say, like the same vanilla. Very much so. The lavender is almost the same lavender. Maybe it's actually a little bit stronger almost in the Lavender Marshmallow, which is funny because they call it touch of lavender versus rich pink lavender. It really is a softer, lighter, sweeter, in my mind, lavender in the pink lavender and espresso. And when it comes to fluffy marshmallow, I think that still exists in the pink lavender and espresso. To me, it really is, I believe, lavender marshmallow turned down the intensity on the lavender, softened it a bit, and just added a little bit of that roasted espresso, that nuttiness that comes with that dark roasted espresso, and the sort of burnt caramel edge to it. Not sweet, not caramel candy, but that hint of caramel if you were to have a flavored, whether natural or otherwise, coffee bean. Like really, really, really similar. Almost the point where it's like, okay, it's okay that this one didn't come out this year, though I love it, because this is an acceptable replacement. Because even if you don't love espresso, I can't imagine you would say, oh, this is disgusting, this smells like a coffee shop. It, to me, at least, it doesn't. When I got my nose on it, what really surprised me that I didn't expect is it actually reminds me mostly of Lavender Marshmallow, Paris Macaron, etc. But it actually also reminds me a bit of this old scent, one of my unicorn scents that came out one and done, or 1.5 and done, and never again, and I still love this scent, and that is the 2011 Lavender Caramel. It actually failed test. It later came out in a Paris collection with a couple other sort of gourmand fragrances from fall 2011, that then I want to say, I guess, spring 2012, they were doing, Paris Amour body fragrance, Eiffel Tower, everything on all the packaging, very like shishi la la la. And so it was renamed, relaunched. I guess it still wasn't that super successful because it never came out again. The notes in this one, though, an unexpected blend of lavender, warm caramel, and brown sugar with just a touch of salt. And boy, this one, I just love. I love this so much. So I don't know that it really is a macaron, because I can see why they went in that direction, which they have here. Of course, macaron is certainly could be lavender flavored or caramel flavored, and have either of those in there, either directly or in the that whipped meringue and almond flour batter that makes the cookie and then you fill it with whatever. Certainly could be here. It was more so that lavender, a sweet, rich caramel, and then almost a little something savory, like almost sage-like in the background, just a little bit something that was strange. I would love, more than any scent in Bath & Body Works history, I would love to hear from the perfumer, I'm assuming, who built this fragrance, because as we've learned over the years, the marketing, the name, means very little. The notes that are in here, the 6, 8, 12 notes that are in many, though not all, fragrances, even at Bath & Body Works, oftentimes would blow your mind if you heard what actually was in there. So we know that like pumpkin peanut brittle has notes of like ground sesame and nori, like dried seaweed potentially, like all of these things that you would not expect but are there and make the fragrance truly unique. And they call out the 3 or 4 that are more obvious and are going to be marketed. Understandably, that's even in fine fragrances, that's how it is. But I just wonder what the perfumer had in mind with this before kind of handing it to the marketing team to work their magic, and what all is in here. All that to say, my love of Lavender Caramel, I need to do an in-depth sniff review on it at some point in the future because, again, it just is one of my favorite scents because it is the most unique scent. But, there's some similarities to it. Now, keep in mind, I'm putting my nose in a candle that's from 2011, so 11 and a half, almost 12 years old at this point. It's going to smell a little bit different than when it was fresh, but the lavender is quite similar. This is a bit softer, fluffier with the vanilla in here because there's really not so much vanilla in this one, though there is a bit of a softness that I'm not sure, could almost be more like a tonka, but that caramel is quite similar across these. So the fact that they brought back, this pink lavender from the Lavender Marshmallow, not surprising. But the fact that they threw in caramel, it got me a little excited when I sniffed it because I didn't think, this is what's kind of cool for me at least, is I didn't see this and see caramel espresso bean and think, oh, I wonder if it's my lavender caramel that I loved back in the day. Didn't even cross my mind. But when I got my nose on it, I was like, oh man, that caramel, yeah, it's espresso, but it's not obvious espresso. It's not obvious caramel the way that we usually see caramel in Bath & Body Works candles. That could be a note in itself that's like a bit interchangeable because it is that roasty dark sort of angle. And instantly my nose and my scent memory transported me to this candle. Again, not a direct dupe, barely a repackage with a twist, but reminiscent, sister scents in that the type of caramel that's in here playing with lavender does remind me a lot of the type of lavender playing with caramel from one of my, top scents, Lavender Caramel, aka Lavender Macaron original version before they did the Paris Lavender Macaron, which was our Lavender Marshmallow from Sweet Shop 2014. All that to say, I really do enjoy this. I'm actually happy that it has that little bit of caramel in it, even though it's a bit of a random name, doesn't make a whole lot of sense with the espresso, whatever. To me, it's more about the lavender caramel being almost like an idealized version of these two candles put together for me, because you have the sweetness and the mainstream vanilla of the Lavender Marshmallow, but that additional kind of surprising depth from whether it's the caramel or the espresso that just didn't work well in the marketing version of trying to market this back in the day. But it's kind of like the fully idealized version of what Lavender Caramel was, what it turned into, and now where we've gotten this to, though, as I think Kent of the Candle Channel said, he would like to see that espresso be stronger. I agree. At the same time, I'm really digging it. I think it's a really nice, sophisticated version of our traditional Lavender Marshmallow that I think all of us know and most of us love. So I would love to hear what you think of this, of anything else that appeared in this collection. And until next time, take care.